It is when we begin to look at aspect systems that are not based on whole signs that we get to what we can call the orb-based systems. And over time, there have been many different rationales that have been given for how orb-based systems work. And the number of these has multiplied dramatically in the modern period, which is just a statement of fact, not a value judgment about this. But basically, all orb-based systems rely on the idea that the more precise the orb, the stronger the influence. In other words, the closer the orb is, the more profound the influence. And these methods are moving away from the idea that aspect is based on inter-sign relationship. Now, this is a really critical point, and I want to just stop here to talk about this a little bit and let us think about what we're saying. In the Hellenistic system that we developed in Learning Midley number 37, one of the things I talked about was that when you looked at the Greek system of harmony, which was dividing the circle by 2, dividing the circle by 3, dividing the circle by 4, dividing the circle by 6. In all of these systems, there were relationships that were set up between the signs. For example, if you're looking at a sextile, and let's say we're looking at the sextile between Taurus and Cancer, and remember in whole sign we talk about it by sign, not by planet. Okay, so the sextile between Taurus and Cancer, these are both feminine signs. They're both nocturnal by that system. In other words, we're using qualities of the sign to reflect on what is a sextile. And so there are certain ideas about, in this case, sixness, which is division of the circle by 6. 360 by 6 is 60 degrees, the sextile. So this gives us some idea about what we're talking about in terms of relationship. But when you do divide the circle by 6, you get 60. You don't get anywhere from, depending on your point of view, 30 to 60 or 59 to 119. You don't get a system that's based on whole signs if you're talking about planets. You get a system based on whole sign when you're talking about signs. And now the moment we're not concerned about the intrinsic sextile between Taurus and Cancer, but we're interested in the sextile between the moon in Taurus and Venus in Cancer, now you get to this whole question about, but the sextile is theoretically 60, but if we're allowing for a whole sign relationship, they can be essentially 30 degrees apart and still reflect this. Now, are we really of the belief that this aspect is equally strong when the planets are almost at 30 degrees, which would be a semi-sextile, or almost at 90 degrees, that would be a square, as they would be when it's closer to 60 degrees or closer to 90 degrees or closer to 30 degrees? That's the question. So basically, when you get to these non-whole sign systems, you're starting to talk about precision, and you're starting to talk about the idea that not all sextiles are equal, that there is an intrinsic change that occurs depending on what the precision of it is. In other words, that this division by 6 really meant 6, and not just this 30-degree slosh. And that's where we're going with the orb-based systems instead of the sign-based systems. Now, the point here is that even as you get to an orb-based system, which was the later historical development, it doesn't necessarily mean that the sign-based system has no meaning. Generally speaking and historically speaking, The orb-based system has been a matrix within the sign-based system, and so both can be operating simultaneously.